Are you right?
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Oh, yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Okay, welcome back. Hooray! Yay! So first, a public service announcement for my deep, deep embarrassment to the poor man who is sat at the back of the room, who I thought was Dave and is absolutely definitely not Dave, and decided to try and convince him for several minutes to leave the room with us and come and be on the panel. And he's like, absolutely not. And I was very persistent, and I'm not sure why. This is Dave. They actually don't look that alike. They're both just tall and middle-aged men, and I think I just got a bit of them. Clearly, I made a mistake. It's very embarrassing, and I just wanted to get it out, because if anybody saw me frantically pointing and doing 2 minutes to wear this back... Right, do you know what? We're moving on. I wanted to address the rumours are true. I apologise. Anyway, welcome back. I'm George. Nice to meet you. And we are now on our last event of this symposium, which is crazy. Woo! It's been such an absolute pleasure to meet all of you and chat to you over the last 2 days. I've had such a surreal time. So I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for coming and making this such a fantastic event. So yeah, we've got a lovely panel discussion lined up for you now. So I'm going to hand over to Simone, who is going to introduce the panellists, but that's all from me. So thank you again, everybody, and a safe journey home.
Thanks, George. It's been amazing. Okay, so I thought I'd just let everyone know we've got an amazing panel, and say hello to everybody who's online, and also to say if you've got questions coming on online, we'll be looking at those as well. There'll be a chance for a Q&A later on. So if we walk down the panel over here, we have Princess, who we met earlier in the week, who's a poet and an artist. Sarah Brown, National Lead for Children and Young People's Mental Health at NHS England. Guy Noble, right, ready? Who is Curator of Arts at University College London Hospitals and the co-chair of the National Arts and Hospital Coalition. Rod, have you ever met Rod? Rod Kippen, whose official title is our clinical lead at 42nd Street for Creativity and Social Action. Gemma O'Brien, who is an incredible researcher currently working at the Wellcome Trust. Dave Moutrey, who is currently the Director of Culture and Creative Industries at Manchester City Council. Denny, who we met earlier, who works in Glasgow as part of Arts in the City. And our chair for today, Darren Henley, who's the head of the Arts Council, who I will hand over to now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, can you hear me? Yes, yes, no? No? Are we on? Hello, hello, hello. It was on. Anything? Hello. It's going well so far. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for making it back from lunch. It's always interesting. We have the last thing on a Friday afternoon, and you have to actually walk across town. Thank you for walking in this direction and not towards Piccadilly Station. We really appreciate that. And I should say, you know, it feels a little bit like a sort of 1970s band, the reunion tour. So halfway through, the lighting will change, the key will change. We'll stand up and walk forward and sing a cappella. So that's something to look forward to towards the end. It's absolutely brilliant to be here, and I'd just like to say from the Arts Council's point of view, the work that you all do is really, really important, and we've learned a lot. My colleagues, Holly and Gemma here, and you know, we've been listening all the way through, and we really value the work that you do, and we want to support you in doing more of that. So I just want to make sure I get that in before we can, and I don't forget it at the end. But thank you for that, and thank you to 42nd Street for all the work that they've done in putting this together. I think we should give them a big round of applause. And it's great to be here in Manchester as well. You know, Manchester is actually where the Arts Council is based. So our headquarters is over in the northern quarter. And we probably employ more people in the city centre who work in the arts and culture probably than anyone else, actually, because there's about 250 people based in that office. So it's a really important part of what we do. Obviously, we cover the whole country, and we love all parts of the country equally. But it is nice to be here in our home city in Manchester. So I think what we'll do today is, you know, there's a level of informality about this. We're not trying to put anybody on the spot in any sort of way. So what we'll do is we'll have a bit of a conversation between us to start with, but then there is an opportunity for you to ask questions, and for anybody who's watching at home or on the train or wherever they happen to be, they can also send in questions as well, and we'll try our best to answer those. I suppose I might just start by just going down the panel and sort of just asking for any reflections on what we've seen and heard over the last sort of 48 hours. Just things that might have struck you, or things that, you know, as you've taken part in the last 48 hours, you thought, you know, we could take away and learn from this. So I'll start with you, Princess.
I would say that, like, while being at the symposium, I really understood.
Sorry, we're doing mic sharing, so we'll need to pass them along.
I've really seen and understood how important art is for mental health, and art is for, like, expression and hearing what I think Gemma said yesterday as well, was really interesting to me, about the, like, prescriptions for art, prescriptions for life, and how it's not always medication or even just talking therapy that can help, but art really adds an extra layer of, like, expression and time to actually think about how you can change your life, and also the parts of your life that is bringing you pain. So I feel like art as a prescription for life is really something that's going to stick with me. That particularly stuck with me because growing up, I used art as therapy before I even knew what therapy was. Before I could afford a therapist. Now I can luckily afford a therapist. But before I could, I just used art, writing poetry, as my way to deal with pain. My dad passed away when I was 9 years old, so that was literally the only thing that kept me sane. So hearing that, and hearing how a lot of practitioners and artists are trying to come together to make a world that is accessible for young people, and a world that makes young people feel connected to themselves and not dissociated. Because sometimes we can, obviously medication is amazing and it's helpful, and we thank medical professionals for creating it, but at the same time it can't be the first step, because sometimes that's not the right step. And medication, it worked for me, but it does work for the people. Art has worked for me, and art is what keeps me sane, and it is my prescription for life and living and connection. So yeah, that was my favourite bit, I think, so far.
And I'm really curious, as someone who is a professional artist and a creative person, when you talk about art as therapy, do you see it as a central part of everything you do, or is it a sort of separate bit of what you do as a creative person?
I see it as connected to everything. I think art makes me a lot more empathic than if I wasn't an artist, I think. It makes me want to have conversations with people. And if I see someone on the bus and they're crying or they look upset, I'll actually ask them, I'll have a conversation with them. And it's because of my drive and need to connect to people. And that spills into my art. So I feel like it's one and the same. Creativity is like a love language. And it's how we connect and how we see. And we're all created. Like, everything is an idea. We're an idea. The world is an idea. This building is someone's idea. So it's like, inherently, art is within everything. And even though people will say science isn't creative, I feel like science is creative. For Newton to experience gravity and create that connection, that, oh yeah, gravity exists, that's a creative thought. So I feel like creativity is involved in everything, including the medical system, even though it might not seem immediately obvious to anyone.
Thank you. Sarah, reflections?
Crikey, I'm not quite sure how to follow that because it was so eloquent. And I mean, I think, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here yesterday, but from what I've been able to experience as part of the sessions today, I think we have really preconceived ideas about what mental health support, mental health treatment looks like, and the people who deliver that and what they look like. And I think what we've heard time and again today is that there's a whole other range of different therapeutic interventions that are just as valid, just as valuable. And, you know, we need to challenge our preconceptions across all organisations and think about how we can better work in partnership to really centre, I think, the kind of message, and hearing the young people speak over at the City Art Gallery earlier as well. It's that connection. It's about something that feels genuine, authentic, somebody who's actually there as a trusted individual, who's going to be with you on that journey, who's not going to shut you off at the end of a session time or when you've come to the end of a block of treatment sessions. It's about that ongoing relationship, that ongoing narrative, and being alongside and delivering care and support in a way that is engagement driven, that's centred around the interest and values of young people. And I think that there's so much that we can learn just in what we do on a day-to-day basis in mental health services, but also so much that we can learn in terms of how we can work beyond our organisational barriers to support children and young people with their emotional wellbeing and mental health.
And from the NHS's point of view, obviously, you know, the NHS has a lot of money, but will obviously want to spend it very, very wisely. And for people who work in the arts world and have this as an area of interest, do you have any tips or things that they should be thinking about when they're dealing with the NHS for the first time, trying to work with them in a positive way? What do you look for? What do your colleagues in the NHS look for?
First to say, I wish we had a lot more money. I think that critical thing around the evidence base is, you know, we are an organisation, we talk about, you know, that kind of runs as a thread through everything you'll see. So I think it's really important that we're having these conversations about how do we put the proof behind what we all believe to be really the kind of the value in the concept, the kind of intrinsic value in this. And I think that's why it's really interesting. I've heard a lot of talk about you know, organisations working, drawing down funding from NIHR, and you know, I think being able to work in partnership with that. I'm really inspired. I mentioned a little bit this morning about those partnerships between the NHS, because I think that, you know, there's a huge amount of value in working in collaboration, not least, you know, being able to leverage the investment of the NHS to be able to bring on other funding partners. I think that the NHS pound goes a long way in terms of joint funding. But I think that there's that real kind of power in that relationship, and I'm seeing it in lots of the services that we go out and see around the country, where you've got kind of clinical practitioners embedded alongside so that they can provide clinical oversight, a safe space for staff to feel contained and feel confident that the work that they're doing is safe, that they're not doing harm. And I think having a space as well, because we all need that space to be able to kind of process what we're working through as individuals, and clinicians working alongside, I think, can provide that. They can also provide that swift access into support where, you know, you're worried about a child's need deteriorating. But I think that that's what I'd really like to see more of: A, the evidence base, but B, that partnership working between the creative sector and the NHS. Thank you. Guy?
Well, I suppose for me, apart from wanting now to move to Manchester, it's been an incredibly inspiring day. But I think really for me, it's the energy that I'm going to take away from listening to all the performing, to seeing all the performance that's been happening over the past few days. It's the, as I say, the energy, but it's also the connection. And I think what's really vital for me is taking that step back to reflect and also to listen. And there was a really powerful film last night about walking in the young people's footprints and steps. And for me, that really kind of rung a chord, because it, you know, I think we need to make that time and space to listen more. Certainly within the NHS and within hospitals, patient stories are so vital. We talk about evidence, but actually patient stories are data with soul, and I think it's really worth remembering that.
And you're based in a hospital. I walk past your hospital and I go into our London office every day. You know, and it's a big hospital, and you've made art quite central to that. And what's it like when clinicians or people who come from outside our world actually get to meet an artist for the first time and work with them? What's that like, and how does it spark off in a good way or a bad way?
Well, I think people are surprised first and foremost that they see there's an artist within a hospital, and I think that's one of the great things about art, is that it's there to agitate, it's there to ask those difficult questions, to shine a light on things that haven't necessarily been spoken about before. And I've worked with artists to ask those difficult questions, particularly around things like health inequality and access to care. So I think artists really enable that questioning to happen in a kind of honest and frank way, whereas clinicians maybe don't get to ask those questions. So I know that clinicians really value those interactions, but also from the perspective of their own kind of mental health as well. We have a big project for our staff wellbeing, and the creative offer that we offer is really, really important for our staff and staying resilient and strong and staying working and well within the workforce.
Thank you. Rod?
Wow. I'm lucky enough to work and see young people and see their work most days at work, and that is most days. I think it's that sharing of vulnerability, that art does, and the strength it is to be vulnerable and to work alongside young people. And I think I'm just always so impressed with how artists do that and how our young people use it to be vulnerable and we support them to be okay within that. And I think there's no greater kind of human response to life itself, really. So I feel very grateful to see the work that our young people create. And art in general, it's a life force for me. Everything I do is around art. So, I think walking alongside those young people and them sharing their messages and their use of art, I think has been really, really emotional.
You know, from our point of view at the Arts Council, we're very proud to invest in 42nd Street, and I know the Darren Foundation also they do a lot of work around mental health for young people as well. What strikes me from what you've done in the way you've curated these last couple of days is absolutely put young people's voices at the centre of this. And do you think that their voices are heard enough in this sort of world, or do we need to do something different?
Part of my job is to support young people to use creativity in whatever way they wish, and that is the rich creative process is hugely rich and hugely open for different interpretations and uses. My other job is to do a bit of a PR job for young people, because so often they're looked at a lens through behaviour or academicalisation, or they're looked at, we're almost quite often feared for and feared by young people. And I've felt that all my career working with young people is young people quite often struggling with how they're represented and how they're seen in society. And you could see that the asking for mental health support is a huge message from young people saying what you expect of me, what you're putting me through does not feel right. And I think the arts has acts in a way that adds that humanity that we need, and we all need it. We all know how hugely important our teenage years are. They affect us for life, and we need to validate that for our young people now that their teenage years' lives are hugely important, and we need to give them the freedom to work out what they're doing, how they're going to manage the stuff that we've given to them, the stuff we've handed to them, the huge pressures we've handed to them. Art is the way. I worked in so many different organisations supporting young people as a carer, children's rights worker, youth voice stuff, and I came to 42nd Street and I went straight into the arts. I said, the arts do this. Whatever I'm trying to support a young person to do, to have fun, to process, to have a voice, to work things out, to be energetic, whatever, the arts do it. And also, we're better off in the arts for that as well, because we're getting these stories from young people that absolutely at their core are creating work that they need to work, and society needs to work, needs to see that. I think it's quite often a very individualistic pieces of work, but that in itself is universal. We all know that, don't we? We all know that the work of individual artists, we see things in it, it's a communication tool. So yeah, this is where I sit after working with hundreds and hundreds of young people in different situations. This is what can really make a difference for me.
Thank you. Gemma?
Yeah, I think the last 2 days have just been incredibly inspiring. I remember last January, and I kind of popped into Rod's small exhibition / office, and we kind of started discussing doing this research, and I never in a million years actually thought I'd be able to share or even actually find something that was worth sharing with other people. But it's been so humbling to not only share that work with different people over the last 2 days and people resonate with it, but to understand how that work fits within other organisations has been absolutely amazing. I think the ethos of the work that we do is quite unique. We all put our hearts and souls into that work, and, you know, it's really hard to actually do sometimes, and there is a lack of funding and it can be really tough, but then speaking to other people across the country, you've got that raw passion for the work, like it really fuels you to keep going. And I was so excited to hear other people resonate with some of the research that I'd done and share ideas about how that could be done in different ways. I got quite emotional earlier today doing one of the activities because it is people's lives, but we're giving people ideas of how to implement this better, and I think that can be really transformative. I think for me, 42nd Street, especially Rod, has absolutely changed my life, but there's hundreds of thousands of young people who aren't getting access to services every single day, and while they're waiting, it's really tough, but this really opens a space to think about how this can transform people's lives. And I think bringing people together and having opportunities like this to share ideas from the ground, not from people's laptops, but literally from the work that we do every single day to influence young people's lives, is what people need to hear. Research is amazing and it's done so much for me, but sometimes it's just about hearing about a young person's lived experience, and that can change the heart and mind of somebody in and of itself.
And stories are really, really important, aren't they? But also, you know, data and evidence. I know as a funder, sometimes people get a bit annoyed with us because we ask for lots of data to show how we can make the case for further investment in public money. But for you now, as a researcher, that's what you're doing. Can you give people any insights or tips in the sort of thing when they're trying to create data, they're trying to collect stuff to make the case for what they're doing? What do they need to know?
That's a good question.
I'm not sure how to answer that one.
I think it's the same kind of if you're applying to any funding call, but I think it's really important to acknowledge what's going on the ground, what's happened in the past, and where we're looking to go. And I think quantitative data is really important, and I've learned from being that young person, maybe doing an outcome measures form to talk about how depressed I am, and being like, I hate that, like it doesn't matter if I score 8 or 2. But then, since kind of moving to Welcome and looking at it from a much more macro level, I do realise that quantitative data is really important. And I've said it before, like I don't like outcome measures, but I realise if you're at that kind of higher level, that data is really important. But just as important as that data is, you also need to work with an ethic of care, and I think communicate to other people how you're impacting people's lives and using collaborative approaches that centre young people in that process. And that can't always be done through quantitative data. You need to be creative if we're going to do creative health at the end of the day. We need to think about creative ways of sharing data with other people that show evidence and progression in that process. And I think actually people are open to different ways of presenting that on itself, you know.
Yeah. Thank you. Dave?
Well, the first thing I need to say is that I was hugely flattered by George saying that I was a middle-aged person. That's given me a real boost for the weekend. High five,
He actually
George.
did say that to me. He did say that to me, so yes.
Yeah, that's good. But I mentioned that because I've worked in the arts professionally for over 40 years now. I know it doesn't look like it, but I have. And I found the last 2 days, I wasn't able to make much of yesterday afternoon, sadly, because of other commitments, but really inspiring and affirming. A large part of my career, I've been working in socially engaged practice. So I'm going to talk arts policy here because colleagues here have spoken much more eloquently than I can about some of the things that have been going on. But what was really reaffirming for me and energising was just to hear about the quality of work that's going on out there that young people are producing for themselves and making happen, and arts professionals, clinical professionals are making happen. But it's led to a couple of real big frustrations for me, there are, well, the first one is about excellence. So I've, as I said, worked for a long time in the arts, and to get the sort of work that you're doing and I was doing recognised as being important and excellent took a long time. And we see that now in Let's Create as a policy that the Arts Council have got. That's been challenged. That's been challenged in a big way at the moment. You might not know this, but there's a review of the Arts Council being commissioned by the DCMS, the Arts Council policy, which I've been co-opted as chair of an advisory group for that. And there's a big pushback from big arts institutions to say the sort of stuff that we've heard about today isn't excellent, right? Because it's not being able to sing the best soprano aria that you've ever sung. I would challenge that. I've got 40 years' experience that tells me that's bollocks. So I'm fine. You know, and hearing this today again has brought this to me. It really focused it for me. And I think that just as an aside, when the questionnaire comes out to ask people about, there's going to be an online questionnaire about Arts Council policy, I think you should all join in. I would have said this even if Darren wasn't here, because I feel really strongly about it. The second frustration I've got is about evidence. How much evidence do we need that this work is good? How much evidence do we really need? I've been case making for 40 years. I must be crap at it. The thing is that we've got the evidence. It's important to take data to show that we've done what we said we were going to do and all that. But the challenge is there's not enough resource. So providing evidence and case making is all about scrapping for the crumbs off the table. And the issue is that for certainly the last 15 years, we've been really challenged for resources. It wasn't brilliant before that either. And so I get really frustrated about this notion that we have to say how good this stuff is and what a difference it makes. We bloody know what it does. We really do. So you know, my plea to you guys who are out there doing it, keep doing the brilliant work. And I'm really sorry that policymakers like me and others haven't caught up yet.
It's really interesting because obviously here in Manchester you've got quite an advanced, devolved model in terms of healthcare and social services. And I know we talk a lot about NHS, but you know you were reflecting to me just earlier that there may be other parts of council funding that we should be having conversations with. Yeah, so I only started as Director of Culture and Creative Industries at the City in April, so I'm fairly, even as old as this, I'm the new boy. What's become clear is that, you know, within the social services part of, you know, adult social services and young people's services in the council, there is a will to do things differently, and I'm in a position as a new person to have conversations with people in the team about what that might look like, and that's a big takeaway from here for me today, to do that and see what it looks like. We've got a new cultural strategy comes out in July, and we're talking about various aspects of what we do as a city. And a big part of that is we are, as a city, looking to become a UNESCO a city of children and young people, which means that bringing children and young people into the heart of our conversation and decision making is going to be really important. And that'll inform some of the things that we do. Yeah, one of the good things about starting a new job is you don't know what the rules are, do you? So why aren't we doing this? Okay. Right, maybe we should think about something. So that's what I'm doing a bit of at the moment. You've been breaking the rules for 40 years, though, haven't you? Let's be clear. And brilliantly so. Jenny.
Thank you. I have so many huge takeaways. I think opportunities like this just provide so much space for self-reflection and being in a space that has been safe to me as well, around so many people that are really open-minded to this sort of work and are doing this work, has been really reassuring. Because I do work as a team of one most of the time. So it's quite nice to be around other people that have the same chance as me, and I'm saying things and I'm getting a, yeah, so that's been really amazing. And just to actually have the opportunity to sit and to listen and to look and to hear and to, you know, just embrace all of it, it's felt as much as, so I do have ADHD and my brain is very busy a lot of the time, but I've just been so present and so absorbed in everything I've been hearing. And it's really just the comfort that there are other people out there that are fighting the same fight, and that, you know, the energy has been really, really quite exciting, and I hope that we can all take a little slice of that home with us, or, the whole cake if we can. And, don't lose this, and let's all stay in touch, and let's fight the good fight. And I think as well, something that I've really recognised within myself is just that creativity is something that I carry with me everywhere, and it is my toolkit to look after myself. It is my prescription, and even in this respect, I literally just went and had a wee session on the piano in the cafe because I was like, I need a minute to myself to do this, and I felt so much recharged by doing that, and I've come back, and it's nice to be in a space with other people that do the same thing like that, and you don't get looked at weird for just wanting to go and sit and play the keys. So thanks.
Piano's out there because of Manchester Jazz Festival, Arts Council supported, on to the 26th of May. I hope you've all bought your tickets. It's really interesting what you were saying there, Denny, about, a lot of the people who work across the creative sector in this area, but also in other art forms as well, are sort of solo practitioners. They're freelancers. And what could we all do more to help support them? Because I imagine it can be quite lonely at times.
Yeah, I think we really need to. I think I have to echo what was being said there about the fighting in that industry that we have to do to try and gain our funding, and it becomes so divisive. And realistically, we should all be embracing one another because we all have the same aims and the same beliefs and the same values and the same vision. And if we keep having to fight for the same pots of funding and proving our own individual worth, some of the best organisations that I work with are grassroots, really struggling right now to get any funding because they don't have a designated finance person, a designated grant application person. They probably haven't ever sat and, no one in the team is specialist enough to sit and look at the outcomes that are being looked for and make sure that their application is good enough. And I think that I think really this is such an amazing space, but if we can all take home that really we are all trying to do the same thing and that we all want the same things for young people, for, anyone really, we're all human, and I think we lose that with, and really we can't do that when it comes to creativity and arts, because it's just, we all just want to accept each other, and that's something that I want to carry home with me. For sure.
Thank you. Well, before we open up to more questions from the floor, just a couple of questions, and people on the panel might want to just choose to jump in. One of the things I was struck by was a lot of talk about places and spaces and creating an environment. So it's not just about the individuals and the work that they're making, but it's actually creating that safe space for them to be able to do it. I just wonder if anybody on the panel had more reflections on that, or how we do it better or differently.
I think again, supporting young people is taking up space in the city. We really look at the Horsfall. We've got these huge windows and people are able to be there. It's not a transaction of coming in and spending money or filling out a form. It's accessible, and I think taking up space is hugely important to our young people. Cities have become much more kind of people, relatively close to Manchester town centre don't come into it. It costs money as soon as you're in. Manchester lives off a culture of my generation. We need to allow spaces for stuff to be tried out, and ownership of space is hugely important. Our galleries are wonderful, but they're very off-putting to lots of people in our communities. So space is huge, I think. And it's that validation, isn't it, that we're in a gallery, we get to do a session with young people and we put their work on the wall. Some of our young people, it's the first time they've been in a gallery is the one that they put their picture up on. So just hand over a bit of space and share stuff out and see what they do with it. We all know in the history of art that's how art happens. We all know it. Art happens in various spaces where people get together and try things out. So I think just allowing for that and space, I think is hugely important. Yeah.
Other thoughts?
Princess.
They're ever so polite. Go on.
I feel like what's really interesting is the idea of collaboration over competition, and how can we help young people to collaborate with organisations and feel empowered to collaborate with organisations, because as a freelancer, it kind of connects to the question you asked before, but as a freelancer, there isn't a lot of support, and we are like kind of battling for the same grants and for the same funding pots, which is difficult. But then that has also showed me people's love for each other, because I've helped people fill out application forms, and that was all, I was only able to do that because someone helped me do it first. People like Reese Williams and Young Identity and Haymar, these are people who have personally helped me. And especially the Horsfall, there's so many opportunities I never thought I'd be able to have or even experience at my age, and the Horsfall has helped me do so many amazing things. I was on a billboard, I never thought that would be possible. There was a period of my life I was very depressed and I wasn't eating, and the Horsfall gave me a support through having a mentor, poetry mentor, because poetry is how I process everything, poetry and music, and that was so healing for me. So having Rod just listen to me, talk to me, and say, do you know what, you can make whatever you want and we're here to support it, there's no pressure, just make whatever you want. Like, giving young people the chance to just create anything they want without any expectations. I feel like people expect artists and freelancers to be good immediately, and it's grants like developing your creative practice that helps you develop and be good. And my first major award was after I had developing your creative practice, EYCP. So just giving artists chances to fail so that they can succeed is so needed. And also really emphasizing collaboration over competition. All the organizations are not your competition. In the UK, we're here to collaborate. London's not our competition. We should collaborate with London. So that's really important for me, like moving to more of a collaborative spirit, not being competitive with other artists, not being competitive with other organizations, and actively exploring who I am in different spaces and what different spaces brings out of me and what conversations like this bring out of me. And I'm so inspired by everyone on the panel, and it's just such a blessing that spaces like this exist, and they require continuous funding and continuous attention so that people know about it, because it's one thing existing, but it's another thing people actually knowing you exist. So yeah,
Sarah, then Dave.
Sarah, you. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say there's an important combination about spaces, and that's the people in there. So how many people here have been in a theatre and been tutted at? Yeah. So a group of young people come from a school to go to a show for the first time. They're in an audience with somebody else. Tut, 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 because they're enjoying themselves. They're laughing at it, or they're talking to their mates. It's going to put them off again forever. So getting that combination right, and I'm sure that's why the Horsfall is so successful, because you've got that combination right, is vital. It's not just about the place, it's about the people who are in it.
I absolutely agree, and I think, like Simone mentioned earlier, we've known each other for a long time because part of my policy area is around support for young adults, so 16 to 24-year-olds, and thinking about how can we better support their mental health. And I think that creating spaces that don't have the look and feel of an NHS service is absolutely critical in terms of when you're thinking about engagement, accessibility, acceptability of the support that's available. I think it is about the people that are in it. I think, you know, from an NHS perspective, it's about us getting beyond the clinic. When I was a commissioner in Camden, when I first took over that portfolio, we had 70% of our activity that was delivered in the NHS Trust. By the time I left 8 years later, we'd split that, so 70% of the activity was happening in the community. I think the space that you're delivering support really matters, and I think we need to be, we need to be really cognizant of that. And just on that point in terms of collaboration, I mentioned it before, but about that kind of partnership cross-sector. Get to know your ICB leads, because I'll fight for the money, but I don't hold it. It all goes out to the ICBs. Get to know them, invite them down. There's commissioners, there's 42 commissioners around the country. You've all got them in the integrated care systems. Get to know them, have a conversation, invite them, showcase your work, because they're the people that are making the decisions on the ground about how local funding is invested. And, you know, build that relationship with your NHS providers, build that relationship across the sector, build that relationship with your commissioners, because ultimately those are the ones that are going to be making the decisions.
Thank you. Gemma, one of the things that that you said that struck was that healing doesn't happen on the blue plastic chairs in CAMS. and I thought that was really interesting because obviously, you know, the work that CAMS does is really, really important, but it's the formal part of everything, if you like. But I was really curious. It made me start to think of what the informal part, the wraparound bit is there as well. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the time young people who go to CAMS, when they walk in through the doors, it can feel quite formal, almost like a school or a hospital. And, you know, it is very clinical, and that doesn't necessarily encourage a person to take up space, necessarily with their artwork, but also with their emotions and their trauma and what they've been through. In giving a young person a space where they can actually take up space and express themselves, whether that be putting art on the walls, lying down on the floor, or taking their shoes off, or having a sing and a dance, you're opening up a space for them to also open up their emotions when you create a young youth-led and person-centred space. And in those spaces at CAMS, you get people shrinking themselves because they don't feel like they can do that in those spaces. I think what's really interesting about 42nd Street is, while we do a lot of therapeutic work in that space, it doesn't have blue chairs or the NHS logo all over it. It's a completely youth-led space. We've got art all over the walls. It's got my art, it's got my friends' art, it's got people who I've never met, and I love that. Sometimes you walk in and you just don't know what you're going to see on the windows, and I think that's amazing because it creates a space for people to open up who they are, and in doing that they start to process, and I think that's where you see the difference being made. It's not just about what you're producing, but it's completely about the environment you create. And the other thing I want to say about that is, interesting about 42nd Street is it's not just like the building itself, it's what we provide within that space. It's the social connection and the relationship people have with their peers. It's the fact that we probably go to Aldi with a £20 note before the drop-in and get people a load of crisps. But that's what makes a difference. It's bringing people in on in taxis to actually access the space who might not otherwise be able to get there. It's about that whole journey from coming from your home where, you know, things might be really difficult, to being fed, being transported, being able to create and express yourself, and that's how we really get the impact we create. It's more than just the action of creating itself.
Thank you. One of the things that we've talked about a lot over the last couple of days around those active ingredients, and I just wondered if, you know, across the panel it'd be really interesting, because there's a whole, you know, there's a whole recipe full of ingredients there you can choose from, and I wondered which ones really resonate with you. Are there particular things people want to reflect on?
For me, it's agency. It's about reflection. It's about giving people the space to talk, and that for me is what's really wrong true. That agency and the ability to connect with one another.
Other thoughts?
So this one isn't in the book, but it is one that we brought up when we were looking through everything. But reduction of perfectionism, I love it. I love it so much. I was such a perfectionist at high school. And throughout uni, and now having art in my life every single day. It's I love failing. I love calling myself a big, massive failure. Because, like, if I wasn't failing, then what would be the fun in, you know, trying different things out? A failure is not a bad thing to be, 90% of the time. Because 10% of the time, I make something really cool. And I get to look at it and point at it. So, yeah, reduction of perfectionism, for sure. Yeah.
The whole piece I love about the active ingredients is it puts the young person as having agency, even in it focuses on what they need, not what adults think they need or adults think they should need. It focuses on young people making that decision. And we have young people come in on a Tuesday, they want a certain active ingredient, and they come in on a Thursday and they want a different active ingredient. And for me, as a youth worker and a children's rights worker, it says that young people actually know, and that's what I've always known with young people, is they ask for what they actually need. You know, I've never failed trusting young people in what they actually need, and this opens up what's possible to be offered within the creative process. So yeah.
Other thoughts?
So I think there was something for me around the expressive language and kind of giving people a different way to explore and express their emotions. And I just want to say, by the way, Children's Mental Health Services do an amazing, amazing job. And I don't want anybody to kind of go away thinking that all the incredible hard work that they've done in really difficult circumstances isn't valued and valuable. You know, they're a core spine of everything that we do. But what I think is that exploring different ways to allow children and young people to express their emotions, which, you know, that the young people over at the art gallery talked about how difficult it is to kind of sit down and express how you're feeling, and to be able to do that in a way that doesn't require words, but you can just express it in a completely different manner. I think that's part of what the value in this is.
Thank you. Shall we open up some questions either here on the floor or from online? We have a roving microphone. Lou is about to come and charge towards you. If you could just say who you are as well, it'd be great, just and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I'm the lead for Creative Health at Greater Manchester Integrated Care. So my question, I love the idea of data with soul. And I completely agree with what Dave talked about, saying that we've been making the case for years and years. But how do we, and I think probably this might be directed at Sarah, how do we create data with soul that moves all this wonderful work from being funded through underspend and bits of project grant funding to being really embedded and integrated in how we support young people's mental health?
So part of the reason I'm really excited to be here is because we are defining our next 5 years of transformation from an NHS perspective. And these are the conversations that I want to have. I think it's been really interesting seeing the emerging evidence, from the Health and Justice funded vanguards. And they've had a little bit more flexibility to be able to do things in a different way. I think there's something like 12 sites around the country. They've been able to be quite agile and adaptive and flexible in the way that they are, the way that they're providing support, the way that they're thinking about impact, the way that they're thinking about the role of youth voice in shaping the way that the services are delivered and designed. And part of the conversations that we're having is how can we kind of harness that? How can we bring that in? So I've, you know, part of the work of my team at the moment is how can we articulate this from a national perspective so that we can create a framework that is permissive, that is supportive, that enables ICBs to be able to kind of move into this space much more, because, you know, there is that intrinsic value. We recognise that. So we're right at the start of that journey and want to be able to kind of create that framework that we can help support you in the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Question over there at the back in the corner.
Hi there, yeah, it's Giles Wilmore from Manchester Camerata. I'd like to pick up on the theme about cross-sector collaboration, which I'm absolutely in favour of, but also to bring in the question about intergenerational, because I think a lot of services, whether they're public services or indeed those delivered by the charity sector, tend to be focused on an age group or a condition type, and it sort of starts to put people in boxes. And I'm including my own organisation in this. I run a large programme around support for people with dementia using music, and I've just inherited responsibility for our work around children and young people as well, and they're quite separate. So I'm interested in how we can integrate them and the benefits that can bring to children and young people in particular, not only in boosting their skills and confidence, but allowing them to kind of connect with other generations, both to learn and to offer something back. So I'm just interested really in any reflections from the panel around intergenerational work involving children and young people.
When you were speaking, I really thought about archiving knowledge and the importance of receiving knowledge from elders, and also injecting like joy back into elders, because I feel like sometimes as people get older, this idea of like, once you're over 25, you're relevant. I'm 23, so I'm nervous. But people really forget how much knowledge elders have, and that then they're not invisible, and how when you become an elder, you might start feeling invisible because society stops giving you that attention and recognizing your knowledge. But also from a young person's perspective, you can truly absorb the knowledge of an elder. So in the way this connects to me is I've been involved in intergenerational projects. So I was involved in an intergenerational project with the Ahmed Iqbal Ullah Center. And I was exploring like carnival and how older Black Caribbeans and Africans, their perspectives of carnival and their stories, and being able to receive that archival knowledge that could have been lost if people didn't take the time to stop and listen to these older people. And then also being able to interpret that into a poem and share that with them and create that connection. And I love listening to older people speak, and I notice how it actually brings out their youthful quality again, because we're all children inside, really. And our interests are linked to what we were interested in as children. And as an artist, I feel like most artists have their inner child really alive. So I feel like if we can really cultivate people's inner child whilst also caring about the wisdom elders have, there's so many interesting projects we could create. Like a project with something like dementia, like young people maybe creating poems or music and performing to patients with dementia and collaborating, a music collaboration with people with dementia. That could be so interesting and fulfilling for both parties. So it's like there's so many ways as an artist and as a creative and as an organization we can collaborate to create relationships that really sustain people and actually end loneliness, because a lot of people are struggling with loneliness regardless of their age. And I feel like boxing people into you have to be under 25 to get this funding, or you need to be over, which is rare to be fair. Older people are not really getting much funding, but it's really important that we don't create those kind of dynamics and we really continuously like push for collaboration and honest reflection on the type of future we want. And also to do that, we have to reflect on the past. So yeah, that's my perspective.
I'm also going to echo off of that. I have taken part in intergenerational workshops as a freelancer, as a musician, and one of the best experiences I've had, really, was going in as a music mentor, community music mentor, to these two older guys who both had COPD, and they were both in periods of grief. And the three of us sat in a room together, and we jammed, and I learned more from them. They taught me so many new chords on the guitar. I actually stole a couple of them and put it into a song that I then released. And it was hugely beneficial, but something that I really wanted to bring up there is I really hate bringing it back to money, but the funding structure of that, because I was a paid tutor in that room, and that needed to happen, because at that point, you know, being freelance, you can't, I think when you're struggling, you can't actually, when you've not got a security net as a freelancer and you're full-time self-employed, you can't actually just do the sessions that you want to do and have fun with. And you need to make sure that you're doing things that you're getting paid for. And total pie in the sky thinking here and total utopian plan, but you know, if we had a universal basic income, just enough to get by, then you know, we'd all have more time to be thinking about, you know, cross-age working, cross-sector working, all of this stuff, because we all need to do this regardless. None of us are going to give this up if we actually are in a secure place, are we? So, you know, let's try and make that happen.
Thank you. And I should just say, Manchester Camerata in concert tonight, Stoller Hall. I'm sure there might be one or two tickets at the back, but most of it's but another of our national portfolio organisations here in Manchester. We're very proud. And I should also say, just been awarded some funding to be a new National Centre for Music and Dementia, which we're really proud of. So some really amazing work happening there. So.
We've got, Alexis has picked a question offline. So if I just squat down here, put the glasses on very elegantly. So it's quite a big one. If you can ask the next government to change one thing to support young people's positive mental health, what would it be? And that's from Liz Allen.
Do we want to go right the way down the panel and just do a quick answer from everybody?
Yeah.
One thing you'd ask? John, I'll start off. Here's one from me to start off. I think that there is no better reason for spending taxpayers' money or National Lottery players' money than making people's lives better. So creating happier lives is what I think we do at the Arts Council. So if we have greater investment to be able to work in artists and arts organisations and museums and libraries, we'll do that for the benefit of people in villages, towns and cities up and down the country to make their lives better.
Yeah, I don't know if this is actually, is this So yeah, I think just financial support for everyone. I think if we made society a really safe place and we weren't all worrying all the time, I know that most young people I speak to are also very stressed about money right now. Inequality is rising and we need to take an approach to try and level that out. And yeah, if we could all feel safe that we're not going to lose our homes, then that would be really the best solution, I think. And that's for everyone. It's not just for people under the age of 25 or people in certain brackets. I think that we all deserve a level of basic living. That's it for me.
I would agree. Universal basic income. There's a really good book by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duffalo called Good Economics for Hard Times. There's a really good justification within that book for universal basic income and a number of other things that are probably very politically unacceptable to this country, but nevertheless, it's worth looking at. So, yeah, I think that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what's already been shared, but I'd definitely say, like, level across rather than level up. There's so many people who are really adversely affected all across the country who just don't get as many of these opportunities. And I think putting the funding in different parts of the country and into different spaces who don't traditionally get it will go so far. We've got amazing stuff going on in Manchester. It's Creative Health City region. We've got loads of cultural things going on, but if you actually look in rural parts of the country or in Wales, parts of Wales where my dad's from, he lives in Merthyr Tydfil, they've got nothing. Like, I think putting it into different parts of the country as well as the big cities will go a really long way as well.
I think, I'm going to go very personal, but I think stop telling kids in primary schools they're no good at art. Stop giving them grades. Stop cutting that off for them because they can use it. And if you tell a kid at 10, I mean, it's the ridiculousness as an artist to tell a kid at 10 that they're no good at art when they are my heroes at art. So stop grading art. Allow it to be what the people need it to be for them.
So for me, I think it's about changing the way we measure success. Success shouldn't be financial. It should be about it should be around health. So we should measure success around health. And based on Michael Marmot's report, that's how he's arguing all businesses now should be measuring success through health.
Thank you. For me, it would be parity of esteem, and that means parity of esteem in funding and in access, outcomes and experience between mental health and physical health. That's what I'd like to see.
I think for me it would be having politicians in power who care more about people than profit. And as someone who has a chronic illness, and we live in a society that's quite disabling. We live in a society where a lot of people have insomnia, where people have overworked, where the homeless population are rising. If we had politicians who cared more about people than profit, most of our issues would be solved. Even hearing recently what Rishi said about PIP, there are people who are generally dealing with severe mental health issues, people with schizophrenia, people with severe depression, that are being told to just get up and work. But it's not that simple. We need to truly invest in people so they feel comfortable enough to work, so they can work through their traumas and then eventually start working. And if they can never start working, we can support them financially through that. And also as a freelancer, there isn't sick pay, there isn't backups. I have sickle cell. I'm going to have sickle cell for the rest of my life, presumably. There is a cure, but it's 2 million, so he's got 2 million lying around. So it's important that people feel like they're not just a number, they're not just money, that even if they can't contribute financially to society, there's ways they can contribute that will be valued and they'll still feel like people. So yeah, definitely politicians who care more about people than profit. That's mine. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got time just to squeeze in one last question.
Thanks for that. So I'm Elaine, I'm from the National Centre for Creative Health. And my question is, it's around the conversations that we've started and hoping that we can continue. So where's the space or network for these conversations to continue? If it exists, forgive me. If it does exist, where is it? Can we join? If it doesn't exist, who's up for setting it up? So, yeah.
We're going to get in touch with... Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I've met some such wonderful, passionate artists and people and organisations. So we want to carry on this community of practice. I don't know if that's a vogue term anymore, but we want to keep meeting and keep talking. So through the wonderful work Becca's done, our intern who linked in, we want to keep meeting and keep talking, yeah. And sharing skills. We've had, it's been wonderful working with the music works. So we've been asking our mental health practitioners, how do they deal with waiting lists? How do we manage that? So continuing and you know, in social care, we set this up particularly to ensure that we were reaching out to young people's lives that are really disrupted through health, so through NHS, through social care, and also education, which is really disruptive. Young people are really struggling in the education system at the moment. It's highlighting difference, and we're not putting anywhere place for that difference. So we really want to keep linking in everyone together as well. So we'll be in touch with everyone who's been involved in this and anyone that's signed up to start meeting.
Thank you. It's always great to have an outcome of something like this at the end, so we really appreciate that, so thank you. And all that's left for me to say is to thank our panel. I was struck earlier by something that Becca said: creativity is essential for our survival, which I think is a good thing to take away. And the other thing, another contributor said that the new vitamin C is creativity, and I thought that was a great thing. So I think, you know, the sun is shining. Hopefully, it's great to see the sun shining in Manchester, I have to say. It always shines, although I do have more emergency umbrellas bought at Manchester Piccadilly than any other rail station in the country. But it is great to be here. And so as the sun is shining and you go out and get your dose of vitamin D and vitamin C, it is creativity that is at the fore. So thank you to our panel. And thank you also to everybody who's been involved in organising the last couple of days. Thank you to you for being here. I'm just going to hand over to Simone at the end to do some other thank yous, I'm sure. But a big round of applause for our piano.
Thank you, that was so brilliant. What amazing quality of conversation. I kind of dreamt and fantasised about that when we first put the bid together to you. So that was so brilliant. Thank you so much. I am going to do some thank yous, and I will do them quickly, I promise, but I have to do them. So, first of all, a massive thank you to the Arts Council and to Bearing Foundation for, it was actually your idea that we do this, wasn't it? So thanks, David, for your idea, but thank you for your support and being brave and investing in something that was a bit odd and a bit different. And I think the collective energy and the collective wisdom of all the people involved got us to where we need to get to. We do need to go to the next step. I'll come to that. But thank you so much for supporting us with it. Thank you to all of our contributors who obviously Becca saw. So Create, Music Works, the Horsfall, Blue Cabin, Arts in the City, Soft Touch, Element. Thank you very much for all your huge, amazing contributions and inspiration. Thanks to our actual creatives. We've had lots of actual artwork and creatives and performances going on as we go through it. So thanks to Princess, thanks to 16 RPM, thanks to the young woman whose name I don't know, which is very rude of me, but it has a voice of an angel that sang in the square. Thanks to Chairs, thanks to Chloe, thanks to all the people who performed at Grit last night, which was an amazing night. Thank you for all of you. Thank you to, and Esther, who did the poem this morning, and Company Comedian. Sorry, there's so many of them who danced today. Very moving. Thank you to them. Thanks to all our speakers. So Councillor Bev Craig, Professor Sandeep Renault, Mayor Andy Burnham, Sarah Brown, James Robertson. Thank you to all of you for your introductions to our sessions and for kind of couching a lot of it in what's going on in terms of local and national policy, which has been really useful. Thank you for all of you on the panel. Amazing. Thank you again. Thanks to the 42nd Street team, of which there are loads of you, and I love you. Thank you. But particular thanks, obviously, to Rod and to G, and to Alexis and Scott, who've been sat on there all day, Katie, Anjali and James, who did yesterday as well. So a special thank you to you lot. If I've left any of you out, come and kick me and I'll give you a cuddle. So thank you to all of you. I need to say a massive thank you on top of that to the young people that have been involved. I'm going to name you for the third time. No, I'm not, because I haven't got my card. So all of the young people that were involved in all of the things that we set up. A massive thank you to George. Been an absolute superstar, haven't you? Brilliant. And also just the final thanks to Ricardo, who's often worked with us, but is a massive unsung hero, and he's just joyous to work with. And my final thanks, you, Lady Lou. Thank you to Lou, who's our oh my goodness, he just keeps us all sane, but just is our event manager, but is event manager plus. I will get you all presents, all of you, at some point, I promise. We are going to have a celebration in June. Thank you. We are going to have a celebration in June. We are going to bring everyone together. Great question at the end. I'm looking at our diaries. I think we're looking at July the 5th, which is Friday. I think I quite like to keep these to Fridays. Just kind of a bit of a vibe. But anyway, July the 5th, so quite soon, we want to get everyone back together and have some conversations. We might have some conversations with individuals outside of that as well in terms of how different areas of work are taking things forward. But we do not intend things to stop here. This is the beginning of the next step of making sure that creativity is absolutely embedded in children and young people's mental health, social care, education, VCSC, community services. Thank you very much.